Yo, what's going on guys, Arekkz here, welcome back to another Division video, and of course today is Saturday, which means that the vendors have rotated. There are new blueprints in the Dark Zone safe rooms, and of course there is also a new set of weapons in the special gear vendor in the base operations. So as always, every single week I'm here to tell you guys what those changes are and whether or not any of those items or blueprints are worth picking up or spending those hard-earned credits on. So if you guys do find this helpful and you do enjoy it, then as always a like would be massively appreciated, but let's get started. Kicking things off in the DZO2 safe room, this is of course where you go to get armor pieces, and again as a quick reminder, I'm only going to be speaking about the item level 32 or gear score 204 pieces, so if you do want to check any of the other stuff that's being sold, you will of course need to go and do that yourself. But, starting from the top, firstly you have firearms knee pads that will set you back just over 142,000 Dark Zone funds. Of course you need to be DZ rank 50 to buy these. You then have a firearms backpack which will set you back 190,000 Dark Zone funds. And then moving on to the slightly more interesting ones, you have stamina gloves and firearms gloves that will set you back 142,000 and 143,000 Dark Zone funds respectively. Now the last two are interesting because of course gloves can roll Savage, which is one of the top tier talents on armor right now. And it's one of those things that you might want to consider going into, say, the next update, because of course they have announced that the Sentry gear set will be getting slight nerfs. So of course one of the popular builds right now is 3 set, that's 3 Sentry pieces and 3 Striker pieces. But of course, going into the new update, that might not be the case. So it wouldn't actually be a bad idea to pick up some 204 gloves, depending on what your build is, with your stamina or firearms, and then potentially try and roll for Savage. Then if we move over to the DZO3 safe room vendor, this is of course where you can buy your weapons. Last week, the first wave M1A was for sale. That has of course rotated out now. Now do bear in mind that if you did miss it, it will come back at some point. Of course, last week was the second time we'd seen it, so don't lose hope. But unfortunately, if you did miss it last week, then you're going to have to wait a little bit. Now this week, first up you have the first wave Vector 45 ACP. This is also the second time we've seen this one. This will set you back just over 262,000 Dark Zone funds. You need to be Dark Zone rank 75 for this one. And the gun itself isn't actually too bad. In fact, it's what I use at the moment, not because it's better than the AUG, but admittedly it's just partly because I like this weapon slightly better. I like the way it sounds, I like the way it feels. However, if you're looking for recommendations and you have the AUG, you don't really need to worry about spending credits on this one because it's not really better than the AUG. It's still a good weapon, and if you don't have a 204 SMG, then you might want to consider picking this up. But if you do have the AUG and you're thinking, you know, do I buy this over the AUG? Is it better? The short answer is no. I will of course do a video on that at some point in the future explaining, you know, how the Vector fares up against the AUG. But for the most part, if you have that, you don't really need to worry. If you don't have it, then you can consider picking it up. But of course, it is slightly expensive. So depending on how many Dark Zone funds, you will of course have to decide that yourself. The other option of course is a black market SAS G12S, which is a shotgun. Now do bear in mind at the moment, in the current weapon meta, shotguns aren't really that great. However, they did say in the most recent state of the game that going into the 1.2 update, they are making a conscious effort to try and make people use more weapons. They're going to try and give you more weapon specific gear sets that will ideally make people, you know, use some of the weapons they haven't used before, and hopefully at some point after the 1.2 update, there will also be a weapon balancing pass, which should hopefully address the fact that the current meta is basically just AUG and M1A. So, with that being said, this might be something that's handy to have in, say, your crafting catalogue, so you could at least go to it as and when shotguns do become viable, but given that that probably won't be for, you know, a good, like, 2, 3, 4 weeks, maybe even longer, then I would still say there's no absolute rush on this one. Moving over to the DZO4 safe room vendor, this is of course where you can go to get gear mods. Firstly, you have a firearms gear mod, which will set you back 237,000 Dark Zone funds. This is of course an item level 32 one, and the other option is a stamina gear mod, which will be 238,000 Dark Zone funds. And then finally for the safe rooms, we're stopping at DZO5, of course, because DZO6 doesn't change and isn't really that useful. So DZO5, this week there are 2 item level 32 weapon mods. The first one is an extended magazine, which will set you back 143,000 Dark Zone funds, and this is the one that I said before is worth picking up because you can roll extended magazines with weapon damage, which is a pretty good setup if you get it right. On top of that, you have a small RDS scope, and that'll set you back just over 166,000 Dark Zone funds, and again, that's item level 32. So, that's it for the Dark Zone. Last stop of the day is of course the special gear vendor in the base of operations. This week he has 2 weapons, the Police T821, which is of course a high-end SMG. This will set you back 825 Phoenix credits, and following on from that you have a military M60E4, which will set you back 830 Phoenix credits. Now the Police T821 has Deadly, where critical hit damage is increased by 27%. You have Capable, where using a skill improves the handling of your weapon for 13.5 seconds, and you have Vicious, where critical hit chance is increased by 13.5% while at full health. And as for the military M60E4, you have Restored, where killing a target with this weapon removes all negative status effects. You have Destructive, where armor destructive values are increased by 18% when using this weapon, and you have Predatory, where killing a target regenerates 13.5% health over 5 seconds. So, some interesting choices there. Admittedly, again, not something that I would personally recommend spending, given that they are so expensive. Yes, you could argue that you don't have anything else to spend Phoenix credits on, so why not? But my counter argument is, of course, that if something better comes around next week, then, the chances of making that many Phoenix credits in a short period of time is admittedly not impossible, but it is, of course, a lot harder. So, I, generally speaking, won't be recommending weapons from here unless they are absolutely amazing. There are, of course, some good perks in the Police T821. You've got things like Deadly, which is, of course, a great perk. You also have Vicious, so those two combined with an SMG are a nice set of talents. But again, given some of your other options, given that you could have an AUG or a First Wave Vector and roll those to get these talents anyway, then again, I'm not going to recommend this for now. And the same can of course be said for the military M60, simply because while Destructive is a good talent and you could get use out of it on an LMG, again, the rest of the talents aren't necessarily that amazing to the point where I wouldn't justify spending 830 Phoenix credits. Of course, you guys might have your own opinions, and of course that is completely fine. They're your credits, spend them how you want. But for the time being, those are the blueprints, those are the new weapons, that's the reset, and that's what you need to know. So hopefully you guys found this helpful, hopefully you found it useful. If you did, then a like would be super appreciated. Comment down below if you have any questions, and thanks for watching. Take it easy, catch you next time, peace out.